Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the world of sharks. You know, those creatures that are often misunderstood, especially because of movies like Jaws, but never fear. We are here to unpack the truth about these really incredible animals. And joining me today is a shark expert.
Hi, glad to be here.
So let's just start with the basics. What is a shark? We all know they're fish, but what makes them different than, say, a goldfish?
So sharks are what's called cartilaginous fish, meaning that their skeletons are made of cartilage, not bone. And that actually gives them incredible flexibility and strength. But it also makes them lighter than bony fish.
Cartilage, like our ears and noses are made of.
Exactly. It's lighter, more flexible, and allows them to move with incredible speed and agility in the water.
That makes sense. And speaking of being in the water, do they have to keep swimming to breathe?
It depends on the species. So some sharks actually have special gill slits called spiracles that help them pump water over their gills when they're at rest. But many pelagic sharks, those that live in the open ocean, do need to keep swimming to force water over their gills, which is called ram ventilation.
So they're basically sleep swimming. That's wild. I know that sharks have been around for a really long time. How long are we talking?
Hundreds of millions of years. We're talking shark-like ancestors in the late Ordovician period, over 450 million years ago. That's even before the dinosaurs were around.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. So what are some of the key adaptations that have allowed them to survive for so long?
Well, their cartilaginous skeleton's a big part of it, like we talked about. Being lighter helps conserve energy. They've also evolved diverse feeding strategies and senses, which we can talk about later. But their skin is pretty unique.
I've heard it's rough, almost like sandpaper. What's up with that?
So it's covered in what are called dermal denticles, which are basically like tiny teeth embedded in their skin. And it acts as armor, protecting them from parasites and damage, and even improving their hydrodynamics for efficient swimming. Some species even have pigmented denticles that can create camouflage patterns.
Built-in armor.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those teeth that everybody's fascinated by. Is it true they have rows of replacements? Like a conveyor belt?
Absolutely. A shark can go through as many as 30,000 teeth in its lifetime, and the shape of the teeth can vary depending on their diet. So some have crushing molars for shellfish, while others have needle-like teeth for gripping fish.
So much for our human dental woes.
Yeah.
Their teeth are truly a marvel of evolution. And perfectly adapted to their feeding habits. But speaking of adaptations, I'm curious about their senses. Everyone knows about the incredible sense of smell.
Right.
Can they really smell a drop of blood from miles away?
Not quite miles, but their sense of smell is truly remarkable. Some sharks can detect blood in the water at incredibly low concentrations, like 1 part per million. And that's like finding a single drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Wow. So how does that work? Do they just have superpowered noses?
So their nostrils are separate, which allows them to pinpoint the direction of a smell, just like we do with sound. And hammerhead sharks, with those wide-set nostrils, might have an even greater advantage, almost like smelling in stereo.
So it's not just a fashion statement, that hammerhead. But wait, if they're so good at smelling, what about their other senses? Can they see well?
So we used to think that sharks relied mostly on smell, but research has shown that they can actually see quite well, even in low-light conditions. And this is thanks to a reflective layer behind their retina, called the tapetum lucidum. It basically acts like a mirror, reflecting light back through the eye and improving their sensitivity.
Like built-in night vision goggles. What about hearing? I imagine sound travels differently underwater.
Excellent hearing. They have inner ears that are sensitive to vibrations and sound waves underwater, which allows them to detect prey from a significant distance, even if they can't see it.
Okay, so smell, sight, hearing. All incredibly sharp. Anything else? I've heard whispers about a sixth sense for sharks. Is that just a myth?
No, it's not a myth. Sharks have something called electroreception. They have special organs called ampullae of Lorenzini, which are pores filled with a jelly-like substance, and these pores can detect the faint electrical fields produced by all living creatures.
So they're like swimming metal detectors. That's incredible.
Exactly. This sixth sense helps them find prey hidden in the sand or mud, and some scientists even believe that it plays a role in navigation using the Earth's magnetic field.
So they have incredible smell, sight, hearing, and electroreception. All these amazing senses make me wonder, how intelligent are sharks? Are they just instinct-driven predators, or is there something more going on in those shark brains?
That's a great question, and one that researchers are still exploring. But it turns out sharks are much smarter than we used to think. Their brain-to-body mass ratios are actually similar to those of mammals and birds, and we're finding more and more evidence that they're capable of complex behaviors.
Really? So they're not just mindless eating machines?
Not at all. There's evidence of sharks displaying curiosity, engaging in play behavior, and even learning by watching others. They're complex creatures with unique personalities, and the more we study them, the more we realize how adaptable and intelligent they truly are.
This is all so fascinating. I'm already starting to see sharks in a whole new light. Okay, so we've covered evolution, anatomy, senses, and even touched on intelligence. What about their life cycle? How do they reproduce? I've seen those weird spiral egg cases on the beach. Are those from sharks?
Yes, some sharks, like horn sharks and cat sharks, lay their eggs externally, and those cases protect the developing embryos, but most sharks are oviviparous.
Ovo what now?
Oviviparous. It means that the eggs actually hatch inside the mother's body, and then the pups are born live. And then there are some sharks that are viviparous, just like mammals, giving birth to live young that are nourished through a placenta-like structure.
Wow, it's a lot of variation. Anything else super interesting about shark reproduction?
Well, there have been documented cases of female sharks reproducing asexually, which is a pretty amazing adaptation.
Wait, asexually, so they can have babies without mating?
Exactly. It's called parthenogenesis, and it seems to happen when mates are scarce. It's a fascinating example of how sharks can adapt to ensure the survival of their species, even in challenging conditions.
That's incredible. I'm learning so much about these animals. They really are remarkable creatures. So we've explored their evolution, anatomy, senses, intelligence, and even reproduction. But there's one crucial aspect we haven't touched on yet: the threats facing sharks today. We'll dive into those in part 2 of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It's unfortunate that sharks have such a bad reputation. They play a crucial role in the ocean ecosystem.
You're right. In the last part, we talked about their intelligence, adaptability, and ancient lineage. They've been around for millions of years.
Yeah.
But you mentioned threats. What exactly are the biggest dangers sharks face today?
Sadly, the biggest threat to sharks is us, humans. Overfishing is a huge problem.
Overfishing. I guess I can see how that would be an issue, especially since you mentioned they don't have tons of babies like some other fish.
Exactly. Sharks are what we call K-selected reproducers, meaning they have a small number of offspring and take a long time to mature, which makes them incredibly vulnerable to overfishing. Their populations just can't bounce back as quickly as some other fish species can.
So,
Yeah.
what's driving this overfishing? Is it just demand for shark meat?
Shark meat is a factor in some parts of the world, but a much bigger problem is the demand for shark fins.
Shark fins. What's so special about them?
Shark fin soup is considered a delicacy in some cultures, which has unfortunately led to a cruel and wasteful practice called shark finning.
Shark finning? What is that?
It's a horrific practice where fishermen catch sharks, cut off their fins, and then throw the mutilated animal back into the ocean, often while it's still alive.
That's awful. Why would they do that? Why not just keep the whole shark?
Fins are much more valuable than the meat, and they take up less space on the boat. It's a purely profit-driven practice that's devastating shark populations worldwide.
That's heartbreaking. Are there any laws against shark finning?
Thankfully, many countries and regions have banned shark finning, including the United States and the European Union, but enforcement can be difficult, and the black market for shark fins is still thriving.
So it's a combination of overfishing and this gruesome shark finning. That's putting these ancient creatures at risk.
Yes. But there are other factors as well, like habitat destruction, coastal development, pollution, and climate change are all impacting shark populations.
It's so sad to think that we're the ones causing so much harm to these amazing creatures.
Yeah.
What can we do to help? Is there any hope for sharks?
Absolutely. There's hope. Awareness is key. The more people know about the plight of sharks, the more likely they are to support conservation efforts.
So, education's a big part of it. What else can we do?
We can support sustainable seafood practices, look for seafood that's certified as sustainable, and avoid eating shark meat or shark fin soup.
That makes sense. Reduce the demand. And you reduce the incentive to fish them in the first place.
Exactly. We can also support organizations that are working to protect sharks. There are many great groups out there doing research, advocacy, and education.
I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about those organizations.
Of course. Some well-known organizations include the Shark Trust, Oceana, and the WWF. These organizations are doing incredible work to raise awareness, advocate for stronger protections, and conduct research to better understand and conserve shark populations. You can find links to these organizations on our website, along with more information about how you can get involved.
That's great to know. So there are concrete steps we can take to make a difference. It's not just about feeling bad for sharks. It's about taking action to protect them.
That's exactly right. We can all be part of the solution, you
Yeah.
know? As we're talking about this, I'm remembering something you mentioned earlier, how sharks have this incredible sixth sense, electroreception. It almost sounds like science fiction.
It does. Can you tell us a little more about it?
Sharks have these special pores on their snouts called ampullae of Lorenzini, which are filled with a jelly-like substance. These pores are incredibly sensitive to electrical fields, which means sharks can detect the tiny electrical signals given off by all living creatures.
So, they can sense the heartbeat of a fish hiding under the sand.
Exactly. That's one reason why they're such efficient predators. They can sense prey that's completely hidden from sight.
That's fascinating. And you said it also helps them navigate.
Yes, they can use electroreception to detect the Earth's magnetic field, which acts like a giant compass. Some scientists believe this helps them migrate over long distances.
It's like they have a built-in GPS. No wonder they've been so successful for so long. They truly are remarkable creatures.
They really are. And as we learn more about their senses and behavior, we gain a deeper appreciation for their complexity and intelligence.
Well, this has been a truly enlightening deep dive. I've learned so much about sharks, from their ancient origins to their unique senses and the very real threats they face. Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up and leave you with some things to ponder about the future of sharks. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of the fascinating world of sharks, I have to say. I've learned so much about these incredible creatures, and I've gained a newfound respect for them.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. You know,
Yeah.
my passion is really to share this knowledge about sharks and hopefully help dispel some of the myths surrounding them.
You've definitely accomplished that. We've covered a lot of ground, from their ancient origins and incredible adaptations to the very real threats that they face, from human activities.
Yeah. And let's not forget those remarkable senses. Their sense of smell, electroreception, even their ability to hear those low-frequency sounds that travel so well underwater. It's like they have superpowers.
It really is. So as we reach the end of our deep dive, I'm left wondering about the future of sharks. Is there hope for their survival?
I believe there is, but it requires a collective effort from all of us.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we need to continue raising awareness about the importance of sharks, educating ourselves and others about their vital role in the ocean ecosystem and the threats that they face.
Education is definitely a great place to start. But what else can we do on an individual level?
We can make conscious choices as consumers, supporting sustainable seafood practices by looking for certifications and avoiding products containing shark fin. We can even be mindful of our choices when we travel.
Tourism, how that tie into shark conservation?
Well, some tourist activities can be harmful to sharks. For example, shark cage diving that isn't properly regulated, or certain fishing practices that can endanger these animals. We can choose to support eco-friendly tourism operators who prioritize shark conservation.
That makes sense. So it's about being responsible travelers.
Yes.
And supporting businesses that align with our values.
Exactly. And then on a greater scale, we need to advocate for stronger protections for sharks, supporting policies that limit overfishing and shark finning, and protect critical shark habitats.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Education, individual action, and advocating for change on a larger scale.
Yes. It's about recognizing that sharks are not just mindless predators. They're vital components of a healthy ocean ecosystem, and we have a responsibility to ensure their survival.
Well said. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on sharks.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And remember, the more we learn about sharks, the more we understand the importance of protecting them.
That's a great takeaway for our listeners. So as we wrap up this episode of the Deep Dive, I want to leave you with this thought. What role will you play in ensuring the future of these incredible creatures? Will you be part of the problem or part of the solution? Think about it. And thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us.